It'd be fun if you come.
I'd like to go. Yeah. I really think I will. Good. You gotta tell me when to sign up.
As soon as we know, I'll let you know. He's getting old. He'll be, he's probably about 81 now.
Is he big?
Yes.
Yeah, I have to.
Yeah, I'd like to be there once. Just a feeling.
The energy is, it's remarkable. Nice. It just flows and it just breaks everything down. It's wonderful.
I shared his work with a woman who came here. Her name is Anita. I don't know if you met this young Indian woman.
I'm not sure.
And she'd studied Krishna for years. And it just shined. I mean, it was incredible. No, actually, we're online. You show in the books. And she's
Watch a team.
She's just broken open. From Kay. She spent a long time with Kay.
Yeah.
Then I introduced her to Joey.
The Tony.
And it just it was like a shock. Like an electric shock.
He affects people. Because you can't mount a presence. Structure can't mount a presence. So it's like finished. Whereas I got a call from this guy who was studying 45 years.
Did you trick? I went trick-or-treating last week.
You know why?
It was so fun.
Because
It was so wonderful.
enough
We went
ideas
trick-or-treating
to
like
do
there's
roast.
on. Sometimes it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an interesting insight. The ideas and how our universe. So they get the video.
Oh, and they do. Because consciousness can't do anything else. You could say that consciousness itself is neuroses. You're absolutely right. We all do. So,
Eric.
He's working on doing the streaming stuff, so you can't be mad at him for being tardy.
I thought that was the emptiness that brain was talking.
Well, there's a chair. Is there the chair or the empty? Which, is it an empty chair or? Sure.
We were talking about.
So I thought 3 minutes.
the conditioning of the mind and belief, can I examine the entire field of my beliefs? Or do I hold that some beliefs are too sacred or off limits to examine? Do I see how conditioned patterns and structures are operating in my mind and shaping my perceptions? Does conditioning form a background in my mind from which I act? Can I navigate my life without depending on conditioning? Can I see the authority within that shapes my responses? Can I drop the need for authority so I can see directly with clarity? That's a lot of questions.
That's a lot. But it shows that the question of conditioning, or the exploration of conditioning and belief, really touches everything.
It spreads a large field. Yeah.
Everything is touched by it. So how shall we enter into this exploration? First, would it be helpful if we talk about what is conditioning and maybe go from there? So I can start with that. Just so that we have a ground that we can spring from. What does it mean for the brain to be conditioned? That's what we're talking about, the brain being conditioned.
For me, what arises right now is like, what isn't conditioned? I mean, in some way, blood running through my arms and whatever I'm breathing, we could say these things are somehow conditioned to be doing what they're doing. I mean, they're just going about. I think the blood's just conditioned to be itself, kind of moving through the body. The breath is, I mean, it's conditioned because it like has effect, it's affected, it's kind of in that pattern. But it seems to be the same with thoughts. There's no real, they're conditioned because they're happening, just like blood in the brain. They're conditioned because they're in, somehow they're like, that's their movement, or their fluency. That's how they move. But just looking at that, I mean, it's interesting with the body, looking at how the body works as a condition, I mean, this word conditioned, and then also looking at the psyche. There's no separate from what happens in our body.
Just to move in with that as an entry point. But perhaps we could say that whereas the body is conditioned in its way, and I'm following exactly. That seems organically, biologically, that's probably hasn't changed maybe for 50,000 years.
Yeah.
So at least, let's say, maybe 175,000 according to Terence and other people.
Well, and then, of course, if we think in terms of the animal, in terms of our systems, it's not that different. It goes back quite
maybe millions
Yeah.
of years. Whereas the culture we live in, and we can go into that and look at that, that is shifting about. I mean, although basically that, following your thinking, the core of that may not change. How the institutions kind of are created, and why they're created, and how it sustains them, and all of that. But there is some change that shifts, and technology comes and goes and stuff. So I wonder if we can move in with that.
Yeah. I wonder what this word conditioning means, just thinking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm wondering if it means like cause and effect. Like in some way, something that is caused, and then it also affects other things. Like it's conditioned, like there are many parts to it in some way. Or at least there's two parts, a cause and effect. Just like the thought process, to make a sentence, there's all these different words, and we need them all kind of conditioning each other. to make it a comprehensive statement. But it seems like, I just wonder how this word condition,
Yeah.
what does it really mean? I don't know.
I think a pattern, being in a pattern.
Go into that a little stage, if you feel comfortable.
Well, a pattern follows a set sequence. So it just keeps happening in that sequence. So there doesn't really need to be a real conscious effort or awareness of the way that the pattern is playing out, because it just plays out. So I think, when I think of the word conditioned in regard to the mind, I think of the mind as in a pattern, but it's not necessarily looking at, or isn't being looked at, and it's just happening unconsciously.
So there's a relationship between an unconscious movement and conditioning. You're making that point, you're making that clear. It's something unconscious in me. Will you say something? So could we say then that conditioning shapes the mind in some way? Shapes it, gives it a, well, we often use the word structure, gives it a structure, gives it a context.
Well, what is the mind then? I mean, it seems like maybe conditioning is the mind.
That's what I was going to say.
It's like, I mean, just in that, what you said, does
Yeah.
conditioning shape the mind?
The brain mind.
The brain mind, yeah. But it seems like in the word, at least how I use the word mind,
Yes.
it would just be conditioned in some way. Like the condition is active. But maybe not. I mean, these are just words.
No. So are we asking, Brendan, that when we use the word mind, it seems as if the mind is almost totally shaped in some way. So is there a quality of mind that isn't shaped? So that's coming out of your question. But perhaps maybe just for this opening of our work together, we could just maybe look at the brain mind that is shaped, and then maybe we could start to get closer to the idea. What does it mean for the brain mind to be shaped? I would honestly think it's important to have a sense of this. Even in our daily life, I'd like to see if we can expose it. What's your thought process about that? Eric, did you know that? Not even pass.
Just trying to see how, like, going around and
Okay, all right, that's fine. Oh, would you like to jump in? What does it mean for the mind, brain mind to be shaped, conditioned?
When I think of conditioned, I think of the lack of spontaneity. I don't know, just the lack of that.
Why? Why do you think that? What prevents the spontaneity? Maybe that way.
Because of the pattern that Sage was talking about.
Oh, okay. So we're saying that once a pattern is introduced into the mind, brain mind, it seems to be it seems to be running on automatic somehow, in some sense. Zach, do you want to
I guess in a very basic way, if our brain is shaped, say if we see, should say the shirt is red.
Yeah.
So we have our shape, our brains are shaped to agree that the shirt is red.
Yeah.
That's a very basic, but in order to go about our lives, we need to have some sort of conditioning that tells us what color is what color, how to communicate to each other, how to do basic activities.
So there's a functional reason for migration. Learning skills, language, all that are. But I mean, there's an area of conditioning that's rather insidious, isn't it? When we're told that we're Americans, for instance, and if I believe that that's what I am, let's say Americans, then when my country goes to war against another country, that I'm in that war, because I say, well, I'm that. So I mean, look at all the wars, for instance, and this is just one example. I'm not picking on this, but just something that just sprung to mind. So we were at war with Japan, Germany, Croatia, Iraq, Panama. I know I'm not touching all Mexico, Afghanistan, Vietnam, thank you, I forgot that, and France, French and Indian Wars, the British. Look at all these countries we were at war. Now, if I say, well, that I'm American, that's what I am, and my country goes to war, that's what I am. I'm not that. So there's some, I can honestly see that there's some part of conditioning, shaping of the mind, that has an insidious effect in that sense. I'm a boy, that other person's a girl. And I have all these associations that she plays with dolls as a child and is prepared for motherhood. I'm prepared for an aggressive life. I'm taught being a boy. I can fight other boys and wrestle, and and I'm kind of acting out all the time. The girl isn't. The girl's told to be sedate, the girl's told put your legs together when you wear a dress. Boys can move their legs around. I mean, these are, I know it sounds silly, but this is all shaping our differences.
Oh. I was just thinking how that is coming in a pretty, very much kind of continuous way as a child.
Yeah.
And then you can't be aware, because it's just not something that our attention is even brought to. It's just something that's happening. So it would seem, I think, that it's going beyond the fundamental, and like you said, it's insidious, sort of becoming inserted into the mind.
It becomes inserted into the mind. If somebody has a PhD, I watch and looking, and I see how people react to that person with a PhD. Part of that person with that person. The other person doesn't have any degrees at all, and maybe they're a dish digger or they're whatever. They clean the streets, and I see how people react to those people. And one thing, I just be personal for a moment. I mean, Deborah and I are very, very sensitive to people that are in the service areas, like waiters, and anyone who helps somebody out, on that level, that serves you over the counter, bakery, we're very, very sensitive about that. And if you really want to see what people are really like, their inner minds are really like, watch how they treat the clerk that checks them out at the checkout place. It's amazing how brutal and sort of offhanded people can be. And those same people in front of somebody who has a stack of PhDs, they're very sort of, officious and very, So there's another condition, there's another level of condition.
So you're also, it looks like we're pointing out how it reverberates.
Yeah.
You know, in a much larger field than just what's happening directly to me. It's affecting everyone around me. How I treat people, how I'm treated, it's all kind of this reverberation of tension, in a sense.
Or reaction.
Reaction, yeah.
So all right, so we said that the stage pointed out that there's a pattern, Molly is pointing out there's something very automatic about it. It's like a reaction. It's unconscious. Brendan's raised the whole point that there may be no part of the brain mind that isn't conditioned.
Yeah, when I think of conditioning, I think the primary conditioning for me is the sense of being a separate individual. Like this idea, well, it's a felt thing, felt sense too, that there's a separate individual that's apart from everyone here, that's over here, that's this and that, and has this history. I mean, I would say that's kind of what conditioning is. It creates separation in some way. It creates a me that's separate from the rest of existence, from the rest of everything.
And therefore isolation,
Right.
which is the flip side of separate. I want to separate myself because I'm told that I must be an individual, I must be unique.
Yeah. And everyone teaches that. That's what's amazing. The priests, they teach that you're this separate individual that has to come over here and be enlightened or something. The teachers, they teach you that you're a separate individual.
That's right.
You get these grades.
That's right.
And the work, the job, everyone, the whole structure teaches that you're an individual.
Yes.
And that's what you are. And that's kind of, for me, what conditioning is, that the whole society is creating that sense. And the jobs and the education, everything's kind of working where the belief is there. That there are such things, as separate individuals.
Yeah.
And that they, I don't know. So it seems to be some deep belief that's kind of running the whole thing.
Definitely. And we want to go into belief.
And you're right, I mean, it's confirmed, I mean, we can see
Yeah.
that.
It's confirmed that
everywhere you turn. And then, of course, what that implies, being a separate being, that then, you know, I'll become rich or whatever. You know, where I'll take it in my life. And then it reverberates, continues to affect other people.
If I'm not rich, if I don't have lots of degrees and all of that, I'll never be respected. Nobody will ever think much of me. I don't know, that's part of it.
That's true.
Yeah.
No, it's not true.
Yeah.
Can we go into this a bit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I look at Eric and I can't like tell what he's thinking, you know? And that's so when you talk about the lack of the individual,
That's what I was remember, yeah.
I'm trying to kind of feel what Eric and I share right now that makes us the same thing.
Wow.
So, I promise we'll come back to that, because that's a very good point, which is, if we're not an individual, then what's the commonality of our human experience? I definitely want to go into that, touch on that.
And why are there differences?
Yeah, or are there differences? And if there are, why are there differences? And what maintains
Why
and
don't I
sustains
know
them?
what these people are thinking?
Yeah. Or maybe I do know what they're thinking. So all of that needs to be exposed and looked at. But if it's all right with everyone, I just want to stay with the idea of conditioning and see how far we can go with it. Let's take Molly's situation, for instance. You were kind enough to point that out. I go to a school. I'm a student. There's hundreds of students, maybe. I don't know how many, maybe 200 students or 100. And then there are the teachers. So there's a hierarchy already. And I'm up somewhere in this hierarchy. I go to the classroom, it's a room, and I sit at a desk. And the teacher is in the front somewhere, or some place in the room, and they're pontificating. They're telling us what we need to know and how to think about things, and they're conducting in some way or other. And that's conditioning me, in a way. It's dulling me, it's putting me to sleep. But I wonder how many students are aware that that situation is put in place to control them.
So then when is learning not conditioning?
That's a good question. Can there be learning if I'm in a situation where I'm being conditioned with this fear? The mark means fear. That's what a mark means. If I'm the teacher, I have control over you. Like the mark is the fulcrum that I use to control you, keep you sedated, keep you, control you, keep you so that you cooperate and fulfill the expectations and all of that. So that's one aspect, right? I mean, you could feel that, right? I mean, we've all been through that in school. This is just one example, since you're in school. The classroom situation says, if you want to learn, this is how you learn. You must sit there. You must sit quietly. I'm in control. I'm the teacher. And these are the books you're going to read. And the test that you take conditions you. Because it funnels down the whole enterprise of learning, which you pointed out, into a series of questions that must be answered. And what is it telling us? What does it have to do with my learning in the deepest sense of the word? Again, I'm not picking on this. I'm just using this as an example as Molly is. What am I finding out about myself through this process? See what I mean? That's a valid question, which goes back to your important question of learning. It's funneling everything down to one point.
Well, when I think of like being patterned, being conditioned, it's like the opposite of learning.
The opposite of learning. Okay. We definitely want to touch on learning. We're getting, it's definitely now in the part of our looking part of our exploring. Let's stay with conditioning even a little longer, which is, like I've been reading Terence McKenna. Terence feels that television is a drug. He calls it a drug. People come home from work, they sit in front of the tube for 4 hours or 5 hours, and they literally become zombies. Doesn't matter what the content is. How many people who do this every night in front of the tube are aware that they're being drugged? I mean, that's just another kind of condition.
Yeah.
Look how insidious this conditioning thing is. It's shaping us. It's controlling us. I mean, conditioning may be another word for control. The shaping of the mind. For instance, if I introduce fear into a child's life and I can sustain that fear every day, like I say, well, you know, if you don't do things in a certain way, you go to hell and you'll burn for eternity in hell. Those children will always have a fear that their behavior may bring about this horrible thing.
So then all action is somehow conditioned by that image,
Yes.
Right.
by that thought.
Yes.
My grandmother was in that situation actually. It was amazing. She used to tell me that when she was young, the priest at the church used to tell her that her mother had died. And she used to tell her that her mother went to hell because she was a Catholic. But she's 80 now, and she's over there in San Francisco, and still she is petrified of that.
Wow.
It's like in her body. She trembles. So I see that this conditioning, this image, could in fact have, she may have compared her whole life to this image of hell and the fear of it. It took over her whole life. Remember, she was never free of it.
Yeah.
It never left. So I see the power of those images. When you say something like hell and create that, then every action of that person's life is compared to some image. It's compared to some different way of being. And that's
It's tremendous, I mean, the power is tremendous. So
Yes,
Just
please.
going to like what tradition actually is.
Yeah.
I'm talking, I don't know.
Okay, sure.
It seems like maybe it's not the image itself we were talking about, but the process of seeing what you're seeing through that image. So
Yeah.
that you have an automatic reaction to what you see because you're seeing it through, I'm going to go to hell. So whatever you do, or let's say you're faced with a situation and the thing you're seeing it through is I'm going to go to hell, then you're conditioned to react out of that.
Yes.
So maybe that's
No, that's good. Let's stay with that. So the brain is shaped by something, let's say going to hell, which is fear.
It's powerful.
Right.
It's been used for thousands of years.
Yeah, also, but even in the classroom, the teacher says, if you don't behave according to our expectations, you're out of here. That's another form of fear. I mean, that's.
Or you're going to be fired.
Right. Or the parent that says, if you're a bad child, we'll leave you on the street. Which actually happened to me. My mother used to threaten me with that.
But you also knew a number of families where they did this, the girl got pregnant and they threw her out of the
They threw her out?
house at 15, you know,
Yeah.
something like that.
So there's another thing. So there's so many.
Yeah.
But fear seems to be at the root of it. So I just want to stay with it. So Eric, let's stay. So it's not just an image, as you were pointing out to us, sharing with us. It's not just an image, although the image is powerful. But it's the way the image acts on us. I mean, that's
Yeah.
and so your insight's very important. It's how the image acts on us.
How it sits in that field that we're calling a mind, that may only be conditioned, as you said, but
Yeah.
somehow the impact there as it's, in terms of how I will move into my life is
Yeah, it's
it's always there, you know.
now it appears to me that somehow the image is double-sided. Like, maybe it's because the brain in some way is so secure in images. I mean, that's where it finds security. Because why is this image of heaven and hell? In some way, it's there to provide security for the brain when someone's dying. Like, okay, so this may be the end of this person's existence, then you supply this image of heaven.
Yeah.
And you can go there. So somehow the brain uses that image to become secure.
Yeah.
And then if you live a certain way, you're secure, and you think, or the brain thinks that it can be secure in death. So it acts maybe as a security thing, but it has both sides. It's never really secure because it's an image. I mean, because in some way, like with that idea of heaven, it becomes this fear of hell.
Yeah.
And so there's always that comparison. The image is always in turmoil of some sort. But I see now that that's why the image is there, maybe in human consciousness, is for security.
Yeah.
Or that was the intent, somehow, of the, this religious image.
Well, that's important.
so. Which comes first? The image of the fear of hell or the security of heaven? I mean, what's the thing that drives us to need that? The fear? Or, I mean, I don't know if there's an answer to that.
Oh, let's go into it. I like to control the young women in this society. I don't want them to have sex too young. I want to control that. So I create sin, the concept of sin. And to back it up, I create the concept of hell. That backs it up. Just like if I'm a country that has a powerful standing army, that standing army is what backs up what I say to other countries. It's implicit. It may not be right there on the surface, but implicit is the army that's behind me, if I say something. Implicit, then, for the control, let's say, of the behavior of young women is sin, and then backing it up is hell. Then there's, Brendan points out, there's the need for, I must have security because fear, death frightens me to the core, terrifies me. So heaven then is the reward. I live a good life, I behave the way you told me I should behave, and my reward is that. And that assuages my fear. Does that help? I mean, I'm not saying that this is it, but I'm just trying to kind of see if we can get
So
out of that.
are you saying then that they're working together, really, in that sense?
They're working
You can't
together.
separate the fear from the security, pleasure of the security. It's not a first in that sense. It's operating on the mind.
Well, first might be the wish to control.
Yeah.
But that may be coming from the need for the security, is what, you know.
Or it may just be, it may be for security, or it may just be, I want to control. I may just have an urge to control. A will to control. And I want to control the behavior of young people. So I create the idea of sin. Now I'm controlling. I'm controlling. That's just one example. Or failing. If you don't get your degrees. And
So in that way, I'm looking at the larger idea of religion or nation,
Yes.
where, I mean, there is a kind of idea of keeping populations in control, and that's
That's right.
we're looking at that larger scale of what the singular sense of conditioning here is happening, to that larger scale where a huge, vast population can be controlled.
We could say it begins in the family.
Yeah.
And then then the institutions echo what the
Oh,
families
yeah, the same
control.
pattern.
Yeah, same pattern.
Yeah.
And the school echoes it, and the education system echoes it, the politics echo it.
And all on the sense of belief that there is separation. You can separate one population from another, or, one religion from another.
So let's go into belief. It's been brought up twice.
Mm.
See what the connection is between belief and conditioning.
I think belief is when we condition ourselves. Because nobody can force you to believe something. Right? It doesn't seem that. It's true. Like they can force you to not have sex. Like you try to. The person can lock you up.
That's right.
But a belief seems to be when you condition your own brain. When the brain conditions itself.
Okay. So belief is the brain-mind conditioning itself. That's very interesting.
For example, with the heaven and hell thing.
Yeah.
If I told you all about heaven and hell, you would be the one that creates that image
Yeah, believe.
on your own.
Yeah.
You could simply disregard it
Yes.
as well.
Especially if you back it up with a powerful, huge, powerful religious tradition that says we've got the doorway to God, to the infinite. You want to get to that, you must go through us. And we're telling you, heaven and hell. So it's backed up by authority, punishment, reward.
But we've also created that.
Yeah.
The whole America or the Vatican.
Yeah.
We've thought of all that too. That's just an image as well.
That's right. So it's a powerful insight that belief is a self-conditioning agent of some kind.
Yeah, and I was thinking it must be there must be a need for that image. Like if you're a priest, and I'm my grandmother, and she's a young girl, she's a young girl,
Yeah.
and her brain, seeing her mother die,
Yeah.
is then in shock and needs an answer, or it decides to accept an answer. And then you start telling me this stuff, and it's like, even if it's totally whatever, it's believed in, then this brain takes that on.
Yeah, because there was a fear.
Because there was that, because there was some fear, And that type of I don't know what I would call that. Because it's in the person who's afraid that the reason why this belief gets carried on. Because I don't know. Yeah, it's in my grandmother's brain that she's then looking for that, or she's looking for something.
I don't know if it has to be fear to begin with. It seems like, so, I don't know what it is, but when your grandmother was first grieving, I don't know if it necessarily has to be fear at that point, before the priest inserts this. I mean, that, the priest makes it fear.
Makes it,
And maybe it was fear to begin with, I'm not sure though. I mean, there's something, it's, I don't know what that is, that needs that, you know, that.
yeah, that's what I was trying to say too. I don't know what it is.
It's tricky though. I still don't think, the priest, I don't think makes the fear. He influences possibly for someone to start thinking.
The mind makes it.
Yeah, and the mind makes it up. And it could be either one. There could be a few there, or maybe he does just influence. He points something out. He says, what if there's a hell?
Right.
And the brain thinks, oh, if there is, it begins to fear. It might be both circumstances.
Good point. And something else came up for me, Zach, as you were sharing that, was that in a way, hell kind of, I should say, personifies something that I've actually experienced in my life, which is when people are unkind to me, when they hurt me, that is a hell, especially from a child. So in a sense, there's already something in play. I've been hurt. I know what that's like. So when you introduce hell, it's not actually completely new. Because I've already been hurt, so I have an experience of that. I mean, that kind of follows Eric's insight. I wonder if we could stay with that,
Yeah.
your insight for a moment.
The kind of vulnerability that's there.
Yeah, what is that?
Well,
Yeah.
when I think about like this introduction of or influence of fear or any emotion, I wonder like what predates that. And it seems like there's just a willingness or just a presence of the unknown that isn't present later. Like we don't know, and we don't know that we don't know. And then as we become more conditioned, we assume that we know more. And it's a never-ending process. So that if someone tells us that something is something, that thing is forever that, whatever they told us it was.
Yeah.
And we never approach, like, the reoccurring image that I always have is this, like, picture of an oak tree. And at some point, someone told me that was an oak tree. And from now on, whenever I see oak trees, I just think that it's an oak tree. But I never approach the oak tree and say, this is an oak tree, but this oak tree is this way. Like there's not that need to approach it with novelty. Need is the wrong word, but it just doesn't happen.
So you're suggesting, and just see if I'm hearing, you're suggesting then that once the brain mind has been shaped in some way, like the oak tree idea or whatever, in a way I could check that off the list of things that I don't have to worry about anymore.
Yeah, because it for some reason instills like anxiety in us if we don't know.
Yeah.
And we approach things with anxiety. I don't know if it's because we've been taught that, but what I was thinking about is what happens before we've been taught that. Because then we don't know, but it doesn't worry us that we don't know.
Yes, I see what you mean.
And where does that change occur? I don't know. Does it occur with the priest in the church, or does it occur in the school? Or would it occur naturally if we were just left to our own devices? I don't know.
So not only does conditioning, we're using that word conditioning, not only does it supply us with security, which has been brought out here, you mentioned that, not only does it allow us to check off the list of things that have to be aware, but it may actually keep me asleep.
Yeah.
I don't have to wake up to the oak tree or whatever, you know.
Well, anything that I mean in life, you know.
Right.
Like you said, an anxiety is there about meeting something that is unknown.
Yeah.
And wasn't there originally.
And it gives a certain power to something if you approach it like you don't know what it is. I don't think people feel comfortable with that.
That's interesting, yeah.
Very interesting. So that approaches Eric's insight. So there's a certain anxiety of things I don't know. And The example Eric gave is that the young person seeing the parent die or someone die or some shock like that, and then the priest rushes in or whatever and supplies us with a kind of an answer, which then frightens the hell out of us for the rest of our life or whatever. But you're pointing out that when one has a sense of anxiety, one is already in need. There's already a need for something. That's right.
Yeah. And that whatever may be unknown would have a power. It's already, the power over us is already potentially there. And we need something.
Okay, therefore the known, which may frighten us, seems a better alternative. Right.
Even though, yeah, it's hell, I mean,
Yeah.
it can look pretty bad.
But if I go to a priest and I do confession and he exonerates me,
Right.
I do that every week. In fact, that's what I think in Catholicism, don't you do it every week?
Confession time?
So I'm exonerated, so I do all my terrible things. The things that the code says I shouldn't do. Yeah, I'm looking at it from the code's point of view. And then I go into the booth, the confessional booth, and I'm exonerated. So many Hail Marys.
But that's also huge. I mean, justifying action, and then you see it on a larger scale and in war, and, flying the drones around, and the, women and children are being killed. I mean, that sense of justification.
Yes.
It becomes very dangerous.
So I could guard behind that. I say, well,
Yeah.
it's for God and country, Okay, so we're still examining this business of conditioning
And belief.
and belief. Well, let's go more deeply into belief. I think that's very potent area. I wonder how deep we could go with that.
Because Zach, you were saying that belief is almost like the next step. Conditioning is there, and then as it's taken on, I mean, it would seem there has to be something that's accepting and then believing. So that's another assumption. That there's someone there to do that, some center point. Conditioning can seem like it's just happening in a way. But belief seems to be more potent in what's happening, how it affects my actions.
Well, Brendan pointed out that at some level, we actually believe we're independent human beings, that we're separate. We know we have different bodies, or at least there's the appearance of different bodies. But, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah. It seems that's the deepest belief we possess.
That's a very deep belief. What other beliefs?
But what is it? It's not that we're separate. It is that, but it's more like, I could say a bunch of different ways, but I don't think we really touch it right now.
Okay, but that's
No.
a very deep insight. So how many other beliefs do we have? And we keep exposing this thing.
Because I can believe that there's no one there.
That's another belief.
It's really not a belief where it becomes, it's a no, it's a,
I believe I have a destiny.
yeah.
That's a belief. I believe there's a future. I mean, every day we wake up, we cast tomorrow. We say, well, I'll do that tomorrow. As if there's going to be a tomorrow, which is a belief.
I'm just struck right now. The belief that I'll be remembered. This one author once wrote, we live in hope of becoming a number. And then today, said to me, he said, we were talking about anniversary of our death, and he said something about
How do you want to celebrate your death?
how do I want other people to celebrate the anniversary of my day? And then he said, well, most likely no one's going to remember you. And in that moment, it was like, holy cow, that's true. Like, this isn't going to be remembered at all. This person, whatever this is, it just shattered it. It like, this isn't going to be remembered. I feel like we live with a veil that like somehow this life of ours is going to be remembered.
Yeah.
By others.
Important right now.
Yeah. What's that?
The veil that my life is important.
Oh, yeah, veil that has
Or belief.
Or belief. I like that point.
I got someone who doesn't know me, and they'll agree that my life is not important.
Just how wars work.
That's right. Very good.
Sorry, Ron, what did you say?
That's how wars work.
Yeah.
So the sergeant or captain says to me, look, your life is really important. Now go out there with the other 2,000 people and fight that enemy. Then boom, 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 dead.
Yeah.
But I built you up. I said, yes, your life is important to do this, to go to war, and follow them always inside.
Yeah.
So one can use belief to create a sense of importance somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, and also to believe that you'll become important. You know, I'm not important at all. I'll get there.
Yeah, if nobody's going to celebrate my anniversary, I better get busy.
For at least the next generation.
That's functioning. I mean, the image, I just feel like we carry that idea that we're going to be remembered.
Yeah.
On a fundamental level.
Yeah.
Some of us, because everyone tells us that. And we see all these people die, and it's like their memory, we celebrate that memory.
Yeah.
I don't know what we're celebrating there, but it's like.
That's good. That's a very good question. So, do
And I'm alive, and they're dead. Right.
Yeah. So do I have a belief that I'm not going to die? I wonder if that belief is operating. Other people die, but not me. Of course other people die. They die, I see them die. But not me.
There was a belief that I am going to die.
Yeah.
Then there's the belief I am. But I wonder if the belief that I'm not going to die, I wonder if that's one that we never look at. Because, I mean, think of how, there's 60,000 people die in car accidents in the United States every year. More, 60,000. That's like the Vietnam War. That means 60,000 people entered their cars thinking, I'm not going to die. Oh my God. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, because I think in some way it's this image, or whatever we're describing about this conditioning, this whole movement of consciousness, the content, which believes it's not going to die.
Yes.
I mean, in some way, when Rap said that to me today, I could sense that content was like, what? Like that content suddenly had a belief that it was going to go on.
Yes.
The content itself believed that, that it would be, I don't know, it was something about that. Somehow that image doesn't believe it's going to die. The image of ourselves believes that it's going to be continuing to some future forever.
There was a license plate. There was a car that parked in front of a health food store in Mexico or a different company. And he was someone who worked in the store, and the car was there every day in the same spot. And the license plate said, eat well, get plenty of exercise, meditate, and you still die. I know, that's great.
How was it on the license plate?
It wasn't like it was one of those.
It was like a round
round.
No, it was a round, like one of those
It
things
looked
that
like the
held
same
it.
shape, yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. They had a lot of good ones there.
Yeah, that's a good one. But that, I really like that. Belief.
Because really, one believes all those things will keep me alive.
Yeah.
Like Richard said, eat well, meditate, exercise, be a good girl, good boy,
That's right.
It starts very
People believe that the beliefs make their life better, as if there's some way for life to be better.
That's right. That's another belief.
Believe that I can be successful or improve my life.
That's right.
I even believe that I have beliefs.
Right.
Or I believe I don't have beliefs. That's the other side of it.
But so, I mean, when you say that, because it always seems to be pointing to some sense of future, you know,
Yeah.
continuation.
Continuation.
Yeah, it seems like all these beliefs are maybe trying to fill in some unknown. And the greater the unknown, the scarier, the stronger the belief. Maybe. Like, there's so many beliefs around death, because that's like the ultimate unknown. And even the future is unknown. I mean, it can't be known. So, I don't know, I wonder what it is about the unknown that's so scary, or
Yeah.
that it's difficult to not fill in. I don't know.
But yeah.
It seems like with the advent of like common knowledge or like language and history, that the unknown becomes more frightening. Because if you think like prehistorically, I feel like fear was more like tangible in the way that it was about, if I fear that because I'll die if I don't fear it.
The bear.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah.
So are you saying, Molly, just are you saying that fear has become a little more abstracted as our culture becomes more complex and grows larger, the fear becomes a little more abstracted?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
interesting.
also, it's
Right.
interesting as you say that too. I just think of there's so much more that I can feel that it helps to make me secure
Yeah.
now than there were. I mean, there's so much stuff.
Because
that
security
happened.
originally was like warmth
Right.
and very basic and water
Yes.
and procreation.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good point. So, okay, so Eric is pointing out that as we approach the unknown, as we get closer to the unknown, fear seems to spring up and begins to multiply and deepen. Belief, seems to spring up and multiply as we move towards something that we really don't know, the future, death, something like that. Belief seems to spring up. I wonder, I'm just following this. I wonder, when I walk into a room and I don't know anybody there, I wonder if belief is already begins to act for me. Which is kind of good. I'm walking into a room, I don't know the people. It's a kind of a death. It's a kind of a death, an unknown. I wonder if belief starts up some kind of belief.
What image making does.
Yeah, image making. That's image making. So, I mean, I wonder if the image making, though, isn't supporting the belief that somehow I'll get through this, I'll be all right.
Well, and I mean, as you said, I'm thinking how one can project oneself in any number of ways as you come into a room where you don't know people.
Yes.
So what's going to happen, you know, what am I going to do? And so how does it affect my action? Because I believe I'm someone when I enter the room.
That's right.
So then I need to project something in order to sustain that belief in a way.
Which is what Molly's saying.
Yeah.
But I wonder if what's behind the image, as Molly pointed out, isn't already belief acting, and belief then becomes the image maker. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
You also believe that you're walking into a room full of people that you don't know.
yeah, there it is. No, it's very interesting.
It is.
I don't have to see it.
So it
I'm
operates.
projecting that.
Yeah.
Yes,
But that
yes.
goes back to my question off of what Brendan was saying.
Mhm.
So how are we not individuals?
How are we not?
And when we're walking through a room,
Ah,
how is it possible that we don't know those people we don't know?
I'm just trying to think how we could ask it.
What were you saying? How did you say it?
Saying that it's conditioned. That
It's
we-
conditioned
the
that we are
conditioned
separate.
belief that we are separate individuals.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for me, it goes into like just examining our present experience. I mean, I think one of the things that doesn't allow us to examine our present experience in this moment, what we're doing now, is the conditioning and the beliefs.
Interesting.
Somehow those things acting don't let us, like, kind of, like rest in the life that we are. Like Krishnamurti said in the video, he said, you are life. And just like letting that resonate. This, okay, so I am life. The whole of this human consciousness is me in some way. And then kind of starting from there to examine that experience of being that. I mean, I was pointing that out.
But then also in terms of belief, none of that might all be not true.
What?
What you just said. That there's this whole consciousness, and I'm part of that I am like, that we are one.
It could be a belief.
It could be just as much as
But
any.
even outside of any belief, if you empty out all beliefs and all distinctions and all characteristics of personalities, you are experiencing this moment right now. I am experiencing this moment right now. So, to erase everything that makes our experiences different, the different perceptions and filters that cause us to have separate experiences right now, which I'm not denying existence to. We definitely are having separate experiences. You cannot know my thoughts. I cannot know your thoughts. We both inhabit different bodies, but aren't we both experiencing?
Yeah, there's like a level in which we can reach is the same.
I mean, there's a level that we're already at that's the same.
But we go past that by adding on to
Right.
onto it.
If I shave off everything, isn't there this subjectivity that can't be separated?
Or is that a belief?
Well, it might be a belief in the way that I'm saying it. I'm sure it is. But I'm just asking, because she wanted to know the commonality between us.
Right.
So the only thing that's common is that I am.
No, that's it. Yeah, no. Is it, put it a slightly different way, is it, and I think Brenda was trying to get at this, is it that there's something operating in each of us, which is what that seems to feel that it is experiencing this moment? There seems to be something in each of us, right? That seems to be, says, I'm experiencing it. Or is it that this thing that says I'm experiencing it, a belief that something within consciousness, and we can examine it and go see if we can get closer to it, is the nature of consciousness to identify what's going on as its own. See what I mean? In that sense.
Yeah,
We're
I'm not
not
even talking about that, and I see what you mean.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
see how that's more relevant to the subject of beliefs and what we're talking about, but I was just trying to
What you said.
address what Molly was asking.
No, what you, this also, I think this is also addressing what you said. No, what you said is important for me to examine. So you want to get a little closer to that too? See if we can get closer to that? Is it that we really are, and this goes back to Brendan's question, is it that we are individuals with separate thoughts? Or is there something in consciousness that somehow compels me a belief that what's going on here is unique? My thoughts are different. Your thoughts, your thoughts.
I mean, I'm just thinking that, thoughts themselves are what is separating me. It's a thought. It's not what's meaning this, because it's an adding on.
Yeah, exactly, like, I was
That's
just
what-
thinking,
Yeah.
like, before we had, like, language and society, we were more the same because we had the same basic needs that we still have. But as time passed, we became different ethnicities and we traveled across the world.
That's right.
We created culture and language, and it seems like that has something to do with it.
Yeah. So, all right. So you're suggesting, Brian, and again, see if I'm getting what you're getting at. You're suggesting that the more differentiated human beings have become culturally, and slightly different shaped bodies, some has slanted eyes, some don't, some have different color hair, all that business.
It helps us to believe it.
That helps us to believe that we're different. It helps
And
to
you can
make
point
things
someone and say, I can't understand what you're saying. You're speaking Chinese.
different language.
So earlier you were saying that you can look at Eric and you don't know what he's thinking. And to me, that shows me that we aren't separate rather than we are. Because I don't know what any of you are thinking. The only thing that I know is myself. So nothing exists to me other than me and what I know.
And Eric would feel the same way about himself.
And he would feel the same way. So that's the only thing that exists. This is a belief, I know that. But just to address that, because that's what came up for me. I only know myself, and I only know my subjective perception, and you only know yours. So if both of those are the only thing that exists for each of us, they're the only thing that exists.
If that's true, but look, let's examine this for just a moment, see if you're comfortable with it. I say I only know my own thoughts, but if I'm sensitive, I'm looking around at each person here, I can begin to get a sense of what each person is feeling at this moment.
What you think they're feeling.
No, I look at the, as Francesca sometimes points out, I look at their body postures, and you pointed that out. Body language. I look at the expression on the face. You know, see, information's coming through. Something's coming through.
But you're perceiving the information.
No, I understand that ultimately it seems as if there's a me here that's making decisions about what it thinks it sees. That I understand. But there is information is coming through that is informing all of us about how we're all actually feeling, kind of a bit. Does that make sense? So, and that's in a way empathy or compassion, or whatever word you want to love. Isn't love the total breaking down of all borders between people?
Well, and then, isn't it when that's also happening that, if I can empathize like that, that it's because it's something that you may be feeling, or anyone may be feeling, I have felt it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in that sense too, then feelings, thoughts, consciousness, it's not that different. I may not know what specific thoughts anybody is thinking, but they're not that different from my own, and they're not, there's only sort of a certain bundle of what we're all thinking about.
That's right.
It's not like a limitless, you know, every thought is, if you sort of look at it, there's going to be the functional thinking, I have to take a pee, or I'm hungry, but then also how I feel about things, how things have affected me in the day. I mean, it's very common in terms of how that movement is occurring. Yeah. In a way, it's not that different. Again, it may not be specific in the moment, but in terms of feeling like these borders dissolving, it's not, you know, it's not terribly different at all, or separate in that sense.
So can we say, just on the heels of insight,
That makes sense.
can we say that there's a universality to the human experience? We all suffer. We all suffer a sense of loneliness and isolation to different degrees. We all have self-esteem issue. You know, we wonder if we're good enough, smart enough, handsome enough, skilled enough, whatever. Right? All of us human. We all suffer depression, you know, the feeling of hopelessness sometimes. We all have a sense of elation sometimes when things go our way or somebody compliments us. So it seems as if the commonality of our human experience, in a way, far outweighs, doesn't it, the individual unique experiences that we have. You were brought up in the West, I was brought up in the East. You know, you had slightly different parents than me. But the commonality of our human experience is overwhelming in a way, isn't it?
Yes.
Go, please. Go ahead.
And that's a belief.
Well, it's a belief until, if I'm sensitive and I'm listening, I begin to see evidence of suffering, a sense of isolation, despair, elation. If one's looking, you begin to see evidence of it.
That sounds like a belief, though. And how does evidence make it not a belief?
Yeah, I think when you look, there's looking, right? Isn't there some sense of like we can just look?
Yes, that's right.
And then there's always a belief that comes after it. Says, well, what I looked at was this. But that relies in the past, and I can say, and then that past will still be the future. So all this culture, humanity will be in the future. But right now, there can only be looking.
I see what you're saying. Something within me, which maybe I've never examined, very good point, feels, I'll give you an example. We all go to the movies, or TV, or Netflix, or whatever, and we sit and watch something, and the protagonist, male or female, goes through hell, and something terrible happens, and a little tear comes to our eye, and a feeling of emotion. All of us can, that sense of catharsis, right? We can feel that when the actor acts that character, and they're going through hell, we can feel what that's like. That's the commonality that I'm referring to. Does that resonate, or do you think that's also belief? No, I'm asking as a real question.
Yeah, I think it's just belief. I think what negates belief might be the fact, like, maybe, the word maybe, or just like not knowing, right? Just like, the only reason you could say that, or think that, or believe that, is because it did happen, and since then you formed a belief that we all are connected, and that when someone else is hurt, I also feel that pain. But that's what happened, it's not here. And although it might be happening now, it's and just an action that's happening.
So he's describing something he's had contact with, experienced in some way. And then he makes sort of conclusion, I guess,
Yeah, that's
into words, and then we're saying that's a belief. So I mean, so let's say I go outside and I experience a tree. Now, I come back in, or let's say I'm still out there. Is that tree a belief? It's a tree. And I'm not saying it is. I don't know. I'm just asking.
I would still call it a belief that it's a tree.
But is there a tree out there?
Well, there's an appearance and there's matter, but to call it a tree is to believe that it's a tree. Doesn't have to be anything.
No, I think Eric is asking a slightly different question, but I see exactly what you're getting at. I think Eric is saying, whatever that thing is, whatever name you want to give it, this thing that seems to be growing up out of the earth and has boughs and there's leaves on it or whatever. Forget the word leaves, but it has some green things coming out of it. I think what Eric is saying, if he's experiencing that thing, is that a belief or is that
Yeah, it's a good question. Where is the line between belief and non-belief?
Yeah, that's the question.
I would say that until there's absolutely nothing being experienced, everything is a belief. And I believe that.
So you mean in the sense that a center is not, only a center can experience because it's somehow being acknowledged to itself, right?
Mhm.
So if there's not a center, it sounds like what you're saying, then
Yeah, then there would be.
it's only the
no
perception, otherwise it's belief.
belief. Yeah. I feel like as long as there's a center that has this accumulation, things sticking to it.
And the filtering, you know, like even an idea of a tree or whatever it is, it's being filtered in some way.
Yeah, basically there's the core belief that there is, like Brennan was pointing out earlier, an individual in a world. And all other beliefs are set on that one. That's my belief. Again. So until that first belief that there is a self is cut out, then everything else is a belief.
Oh, that could also be belief.
Yeah,
So that is
well, it is. I mean, but that's what I'm pointing at, is what am I going to say to you that isn't a belief right now?
No, but it's very interesting as you go deeper into the question of belief, how many things are being exposed.
And then, because it was part of our question too, what would that be like if I didn't take on belief? I mean, living without it, let's say.
Is it possible to live without?
What's meaning life if without that?
But is it, are you asking the question, is it possible to live without belief?
Yeah. It's pretty pervasive what we're seeing.
For humans?
For humans. But I don't know, I mean, humans have this tendency for ownership, to mine. I don't know how much the animals, it's like that in a way.
My territory.
Yeah, there is territory.
I piss on my tree and
But
that
it's part of the
becomes my territory.
survival,
That's what happens.
I don't know, psychologically anyway, and maybe it doesn't matter anyway. But there is with the human, at least from what's experiencing here now, is the sense of mine, my belief, my anything, my conditioning.
Yeah, that's
Those
a
things
good
are happening.
question. Does a belief have the same power if there is no experience of there being a self to own the belief? So
Otherwise, can there be a belief without that?
I don't know. That's a good question, because it seems like there might still be those beliefs in thought governing the way that the form is expressing itself. But if the experience is of no self, then do those beliefs don't have power over me? Because there's no one to own them.
So are you saying, I just want to see if I can get close to this. Are you saying maybe there's only one real belief and out of that springs all the other beliefs? Something like that?
That's what I was saying before, but yeah.
Something like that.
Something like that. But I did wonder, because I was asking myself, what isn't a belief? So what if I say something right now that is a lie? Is that a belief? If I say Jesus is God, is that a belief? I don't believe it.
I was also noticing how a person can hold two completely opposing beliefs.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
But in that you said there, I think there's a belief you don't believe it.
That's what I was
Yes.
thinking.
But what is that? That's curious, because what is that then?
Yeah.
What is what?
Belief, like what is it that you noticed that you saw that you didn't believe,
Oh, he said it.
But how did you see that?
See that he didn't believe that?
What knew that it wasn't a belief in you? How did you know that he didn't believe that?
Zach is saying that he premised it by saying it's a lie.
I know, but there's some knowing that. Like, it's not like the word. You can't, like, if someone says something, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, if it says words.
I got your question.
Yeah.
Zach, I think Brendan is saying, just because he's saying it's a lie, why do I accept the fact that it really is a lie? It may not be a lie. In other words, I may believe that it's a lie because he told me it's a lie. Is that what you're getting at, Brendan? Something like that? Or we've got
Something like that, but there's something else in it, which I wasn't able to bring out.
Okay, all right. No, but I think that got closer. See, look,
It's something about knowing. Like, I mean, I'm just looking at belief not as like something. I mean, because what is belief? Like, it must be somehow a knowingness, like that one knows something. It's not like just it's like a psychological action.
yes,
It's something that happens when you think you know.
yes.
But it's not like the words or the ideas that have anything to do with it. It's like a movement in the psyche.
Yeah, so are you asking the question then, is belief resistance to the fact of not knowing? I just want to see if I'm capturing what you're saying.
Something like that.
What you were saying brought up for me, though, that the belief, that word is describing a power rather than words. It's not actually describing the words that I believe in. It's not like that I exist or that I'm an individual. That's not the belief. The belief is this power, this sensation that it's true.
Why? Why does it have that power?
Some knowing, some knowing.
Knowingness.
Like a knowing.
Yeah, and what is that?
What is that? That's what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
what is that?
What's coming up for me is that when any person goes through life, I don't have a belief about every single thing.
That's right.
Let's say I'm someone who's like nervous about what people think of me.
Yes,
And so I look and I'll say, oh, what does that person think? And I don't make a belief about it. I'll say, oh, okay, they like me. Oh, okay, they don't like me. But there's plenty of other things I could have a belief about.
That's right.
So this question of what it would mean to not have belief, I mean, it seems to be related to this. What do I need from the world? And if I need something, I make a belief around that. So if I need nothing, then is there no belief?
Or is the feeling that I need nothing or belief?
Or that you need something.
Maybe we're talking about it.
Yeah,
Not actually needing nothing.
Yeah, you see, look how subtle belief is. I may convince myself that I don't need anything in order to end belief, let's say, the end dependence on belief, which becomes a belief. That if I do this, then this happens.
There's the
That's
potential
cause
for
and
that,
effect.
but is it also possible that someone is actually completely empty of needing anything, and there's no belief attached to it?
Of course, anything is possible. Sure. Yeah. But I mean, see, but look how conditional that is. I think that part of this whole spiritual movement that we were exposed to is this idea that I can empty my mind of everything. And I think there's a tendency, I meet so many people that say, at some point say, and I don't think this is unique to anybody, I think we've all moved there. Oh, if I could just empty my mind, if I could just clear my mind out. But that, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I don't really finish it.
No.
I'm just feeling like, okay, so I took it to the point of needing nothing. But just to stay back and say, okay, those beliefs are created from something that I need.
Yeah. So Eric, are you suggesting if I didn't need anything, therefore the whole belief-creating process might come to an end? Is that what you're suggesting? Or what's being
Yeah,
suggested?
that's what I also said, that just,
Even just the beliefs are created out of needs.
yeah.
Beliefs are created out of needs. No, that's very, very deep insight.
Yeah, that is, it really is.
But it's also been suggested, I'm sorry, Becky, you were going to say something.
I have to remember what I was going to say, go ahead.
So, So we started examining belief, and it looks like consciousness itself can't operate without belief. I mean, that's already been suggested here, and as we examine it more deeply, it seems that way. Now, I'm saying it seems that way because I don't want it to sound like another belief. This is so, and it's a belief.
Yeah.
But it seems that consciousness contextualizes everything in terms of belief on some level. Even when we don't think it's a belief, there's a belief behind it. Now, you know.
Well, I was just thinking how belief, I mean, from what you were saying, Eric, it is a kind of construction that may be about something that's not necessarily true or cannot be proven, but yet somehow it works for me. So I'm willing to believe because of my need. I mean, of course, God is an easy one because, I mean, no one can prove there is a God, but look at the millions that believe in that. Even though there's no fact, there's no way to prove it.
They're willing to die for it.
They're willing to die for it. They're willing to kill for it.
Yeah, kill for it.
But so it seems like it's a construction that is really based on no fact. There's no reality. But yet it's you know, we can see how it sets up very quickly in our mind, and then we act from that. It's very curious.
Okay. So.
And then you mentioned resistance. I mean, there's
Yes.
a sense of resistance about belief because it's almost an easy way out to avoid meeting something as it's coming up.
Change. Belief resists change, doesn't it? Belief
It
says,
absolutely
yeah,
resists.
I don't have to meet that thing that's coming up because my belief sustains me.
Right.
Something.
I don't have to meet you. They've already made an image. I
Yeah.
believe in that image, so I'll never find out what's going on. You know, I never had any sense of right here, right now, what's, you know, in a sense, meaning, what's experiencing.
Absolutely. All right. Now, I wonder if we could touch on Molly's question before, because I said we come back to it. I think we have some time.
Mm-hmm.
So, Molly, could you restate that question about whether it's possible for people to collectively, I'm not saying it quite right, but please correct me. Is it possible for people to collectively know each other or know what we're thinking collectively? Something like that? Was your question touching on something like that? Or is it too far back?
It was more asked, Brandon was saying that we're not separate individuals.
Yes.
So they're asking how that's so.
How that's so?
Yeah.
So
I doesn't see that.
Yeah. So let's just get the question. Oh, why are we asking that? What's the question?
Are we separate individuals?
Is that your question?
Well, we kind of addressed that earlier.
Oh, we did. Okay.
Then there was maybe another question that you were referring to.
Okay. I mean, was there something you brought up that we didn't cover that you would like?
I asked what the difference between learning and conditioning.
Learning and conditioning.
And I think you even asked if there could be learning without conditioning.
Yeah.
In a sense, yeah.
And I think it's possible. I just think that most people don't experience that.
So what is learning? Let's go into that. I want to start with it. Like, what does it mean to learn?
Well, in psychology, they say it's like a collective, like a collection of experiences that shapes how you react to things.
Okay. It's a good place to start. You know, it's very interesting. When I was a child, because there was no TV for like 7 years, I think your TV's 56.
No, it's before that.
I mean, but most people's homes, 52. 54. So what I used to do with a bunch of kids is that whenever anybody would receive a refrigerator or something or a stove or something, they always put the cart down the street. I grew up in a very urban, I grew up in Brooklyn, a very urban suburb. So we used to play in this cardboard box. And we used to play Ford. We used to do things to it. We move it and shake it, jump out of it, jump into it, do all sorts of things. But at some point, and because I taught for many years, at some point it became absolutely clear to me that if you watch children when they're playing, they're learning. Children are learning how far they can go with pushing the chair or the table, or if they jump out, you know, what's going to happen, or if they, there's this constant learning thing going on. And yet we don't think of that, do we? And we oftentimes, a parent might say to the child, stop playing, you have studying to do. You know, something like that, you know. You have, in other words, you have learning to do. Stop doing that, because you have learning to do. So I wonder if we can go into this whole question of learning. Because many of you may become educators, and Brendan is interested in Molly, Francesca, teaching yoga. All of them. So it's, yeah, sage, so it's...
We're actually already teachers, I mean,
of course,
because everyone is, you know.
of course, that's it. But I just mean even taking it up as a
Yes, I know.
profession or something. So what does it mean to learn? I wonder if we can go into that. Following on this question. What does that mean to learn? Molly gave a pretty good definition based on this psychology, a series of experiences that are gathered together and forming a reaction.
I guess it implies that you don't know something. You have things to know.
Okay.
To understand something that you didn't understand.
Well, as you were describing, the kids playing in the boxes, and if you watch kids, I mean, there's kind of a fearlessness. They're not, they fall and they hurt themselves, and they cry for a little bit and then kind of get over it and stand up. It's kind of, there's not an impediment.
From reading Krishnamurti, I was kind of struck by the sense that learning is constant, and that we kind of assign things to make us feel like we learn specifically from those, from school or from this setting here.
Yeah.
But if you believe that learning is constant, then it actually, I think, works against how we form systems of beliefs, because if you are constantly learning, what you just thought was true can be proven false.
That's right. So are you suggesting that conditioning may be an impediment to learning?
Yes.
That gives us a whole new insight into conditioning. So what Molly is suggesting is that if learning can never take place once the mind is conditioned and is not aware of the action of the conditioning, something like that. Does that make sense? Something like that.
But then Francesca also brought up that one can have beliefs that are opposing.
That's right. And in fact, it could be that all of our beliefs have opposing beliefs. And we're carrying all of that all the time.
So I said, pick and choose what works in the moment
That's
for my needs.
right. So how much time do we have?
Just an hour.
Good.
Time. I believe there's time.
That's right. So let's go a little more deeply into this learning thing. So I think it's important. What does it mean to learn deeply?
Well, it seems like, at least for me, it works best when I figure it out for myself. And not when I just listen to somebody else and say, oh, okay, and believe, because that's more of a belief. Right?
Yeah.
And then, so if you figure it out for yourself in whatever way, that's the way of learning.
True, but then so we're just seeing if we can open this up.
Yeah.
Right. Does the authority within then say, I know that, I've learned that?
I know.
No, reason I'm asking, I see the authority without wants to tell me something. And either I resist it or I accept it. I say, oh yes, you're the authority.
The authority with?
Yeah, out there,
Yeah.
the authority, the teacher, the priest, whoever, the Christian or whatever. The authority without. And I say, well, either I resist it or I accept it. I say, oh yes, this is true. But am I aware of the authority within? Because we're looking at learning. It could be that the authority within also acts to condition me in that sense and prevent learning. The reason I'm asking this question is that look at all the thousands of people that came to Christian learning. And they all wanted something. They said, sir, please give it.
I want to learn something.
I want to learn something. Give it to me, give it to me, give it to me. The Christian learner said, okay, we'll go into all this. See? We'll look at becoming, we'll look at conditioning, we'll look at this, we'll look at that. And afterwards, people say, you filled me up. I'm not thirsty anymore. And they go away, and 2 days later, the thirst is back again. Please, sir, say more, give me more, give me more. This is the fact. This is actually happening. Not just around him, but about all these teachers. All these teachers. So I think the question of learning is a critical question in that sense. That makes sense.
Is there anything at all that needs to be learned?
All right, let's look at that.
I think it's all.
Belief, yeah, that you need to learn.
Sorry, say it.
A belief that you need to learn?
But,
Is that
so
a
this
question?
Or anyone.
So I'm still interested in what the difference in language when we're trying to decide what the difference between learning is and conditioning is and belief.
Yes.
Because we're saying right now that they're all different things.
No, we're not.
Or at least pointing at that, or maybe they're not. But, yeah, so in that sense, is learning necessarily something that you're like figuring out?
Yes.
Or is learning not figuring something out, something different? Right, because you said, what is there to learn? What is that? Is that how we're talking about it currently? This is how we're using the word "be learning," as if it's like we have something to learn. You see what I'm saying?
So, Brenda, if you don't mind me asking, what does it mean that there's nothing to learn? Let's see if we go into it from that.
Yeah. I wouldn't know how to say what I'm trying to say here. It just seems that there's something immense to learn. Unbelievably immense.
Yeah.
Beyond everything that we know is learning.
Yeah.
And yet it's not learning. And it cannot be learned.
Yeah.
And there's no possible way to know it and to learn it.
Okay.
It seems like there's something in this word learning to discover, to come upon freshly, to something in the word that's true. But everything about this word seems totally untrue. Like untrue in the sense that getting something, possessing something, acquiring, and it's none of those things. Accumulating, having, realizing, all these words seem to describe a state of separation in some way. I mean, they describe a me learning something or getting something or possessing something.
Yeah.
Knowledge, I can read a book and I'm learning and I can get that knowledge.
Yes.
But I mean, can we learn life itself? Like, can we learn that?
Yes, it's a very good question. It was very interesting. As you were saying that, it occurred to me that we spend half of our life learning, and then if we enter into like Christian Bertie's teachings, spiritual teachings, then we spend the next half unlearning. What's that?
Undoing learning.
Undoing it.
Or, I mean, this is how we're using learning as an acquisition of knowledge.
Yes.
So is that how we were using the word before?
I don't think it's how we were using it before. I think we were
That's what, I was thinking that's what conditioning is. I thought
Yeah.
conditioning is the acquired acquisition of knowledge and living your life based on that.
Oh.
And then we use the word learning to separate conditioning from something else. But we can use any word,
No, yeah.
you know?
No problem. So you're suggesting that when we first put that word out there, learning, that it was looking at something maybe had more vitality than just accumulation, right? So let's see if we
Because
can.
you were, I mean, we sort of began, actually, Molly had mentioned it before, you were describing the children, just even learning about space,
Yeah,
how to move in
As they're
space.
growing up.
Yeah.
They're growing up.
As a child,
yes.
adolescent, I mean, you have to kind of go through all that. You're not just gonna start going into these questions about life as like a 2-year-old.
that's,
You're not there, you know? Just, it's almost like.
Where you are there.
Where you are? Right.
that's a very key point, because, I think it may be impossible. I'm going to say something very terrible here, because I'm touching on some of the people that are already here, but I think it's impossible for young teenagers to grasp some of these questions, because they're thrust of their life, and since you were both young teenagers not that long ago, it's very hard to grasp a question about, what's the meaning of life and all that business, whatever, however that would open up. When you're trying to put something together, in order to function, you need to function. You're with your friends, you're in the classroom, you've got to pass a test, you've got to function.
But you don't need to put all that together to function.
You don't, that's my point.
I mean, that's what I
Yes.
was when I was handed I am that as a 13-year-old. It was like,
It impacted us.
it was like, well, all right, I'm not going to keep building this false identity
Yes.
that I just started the other day. This is what Sage is like, this is his friends, and then all of a sudden, no, that doesn't exist. I'm not going to build that anymore.
Okay, so that's unusual.
It wasn't necessary to build that in order to function. It functioned just fine.
No, but for most young teenagers, they're trying to put together a persona, they're trying to be comfortable with their friends, they're trying to, boyfriend-girlfriend relationships, they're trying to figure out what that is and how that works, and, accept rejection, accept this, accept that, all that is, coming into play. And passing tests, and, what clothes do I wear? Am I a jock, or am I a gothic, or am I this, or am I that? I mean, these are the things that are like going on, right? Most young teenagers.
And actually, it continues.
Yeah, it does continue, of course. But we're just saying that
Slightly different.
I think it's a very
dynamic.
it's dynamic, but it's a difficult time to start to introduce questions that deconstruct the whole.
Well, they're so bent on constructing.
That's it.
Well said.
It's also a great time to introduce this question.
Yeah.
It could be if the resistance isn't there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, one says no.
Well, and also there's just not much opportunity or, sort of nurturing of that, or in Sage's case, it was unusual. Because your dad, there was already something going on for many people that you're not going to find that kind of
And Mom told me.
openness.
Mom,
And
Mom,
yeah,
Mom,
it
Mom,
can-
okay,
it can be something questioned. So if there isn't that possibility, it makes it a little more difficult, but certainly not impossible.
All right, so let's look at this learning thing, because now I'd like to share something personal also, which is that I didn't come across Kay or Nisargadatta or any of these people when I was young. But I knew that I had a sense of certainty that the life that was being presented to me when I was young wasn't real. I just knew. I know that that's your experience too, and that you've shared that with me.
Yeah, maybe all of us have.
Yeah, maybe all of them. So, which could be a crack in the egg.
Mm.
Right? crack in the egg may have occurred. A psychic crack.
So we are all eggs that have been cracked.
What's that?
I just said like the worst carton of eggs you could ever come across.
The worst from one point of view and the best from another. You know, it's very interesting in the Tao, the ancient Tao, T-A-O, the Taoist says, which tree would you like to be in the forest? And they say the person of the Tao wants to be the craggiest tree that has the least benefit, and the wood chopper passes it by. So if you're a cracked egg.
Yeah, I mean, most people look at the carton and put it back.
That's right. Not a bad thing to be. Okay, so cracking the egg and learning. I wonder if we could just look at that. If one has a sense, as all of us here have and had, that something's not right here, something's not adding up here, is that the basis of true learning? I'm not sure I'm saying it.
Okay. Well, the reason I said that there's not something that along the lines of there's nothing to learn.
Yes.
I said that. Is because it seems that, like Sage is describing, at some point people start to believe that there's something to figure out.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to break that.
No, go ahead.
Learning is figuring out something.
But well, I guess we're using it in a few different ways here.
Right.
A few different ways.
That's regulated.
I mean, that's just like, it's confusing. It's and different meanings.
Are we using learning to be
To figure out something.
to be the same thing as conditioning, or are we using it differently?
Or are we just playing with it in order to see what comes up?
And even my Molly asks is, in ways it's possible not to be conditioned by learning, I would say.
Not to be conditioned.
Yeah, I mean, can learning go on without it being a conditioning factor?
Well, what if, you know, Krishnamurti, for instance, often says, I'm not quoting, but he often says that in negation, one can learn in negation, meaning not this, not this, not this, not this, not this. Because the young Richard, I can tell you, who said, this is not right, this is not real, this order doesn't exist, was saying not this, not this, not this, not this. And there was a learning in that.
I mean, he like points like when he dissolves the order of the star.
Yes.
He says like this is not it, but he also doesn't tell them like
What
tell
it
all
is.
his followers what it is.
That's right.
Right, so,
I'm using it as a filler.
Yeah. I understand. You're pointing to whatever that thing is. Yes.
oh, and it's just interesting because it's indicating that learning is not a movement toward an answer. It's not about answers.
Okay.
Or can we ask that question?
Can there be learning in which nothing is resolved, nothing is asked,
Yeah.
which is really what Zach was getting at.
Yeah.
What happens for me when I look at that is that I wouldn't put any word to it. Like we've been calling, you know, there's these two ways of using learning. There's more than two ways, but the two we've been using synonymously with conditioning, and then there's also this real learning, this fresh learning where nothing's accumulated and nothing is held on to, and it's not for a specific center. But at that point, I would say that nothing's happening. Like, I hesitate to even call that learning.
Yeah,
I call it anything.
That's a good point.
Just as I would be hesitant to call nothing nothing.
Right, exactly.
I mean, it's just a way to talk about it.
Yeah.
That was beautiful.
So you're both.
I did hesitate when I said that.
No, that's okay. So Sage is saying, as we get closer to the kind, I'm going to use a terrible word now, the kind of experience in which there's no accumulation, which means it's not experience, but I'm using, forgive me, I don't know, right now I can't think of another word, but the kind of seeing, the kind of whatever, meeting life, as Deborah said, in which there's no accumulation, maybe the word learning has to be dropped. Maybe that's not the right word.
And I mean, I don't think anything really has to be dropped. I guess what
No,
makes
no,
it more than just
Yeah.
like trying to find this thing and
Yeah.
describe it makes it seem like there's actually some thing happening. Like there's some,
Yeah.
which then is an accumulation again.
Yes, that's right.
Right.
Like there isn't anything happening. And of course, even to say that is calling it something, but like this type of, this special learning that we're trying to get at isn't anywhere. It's not.
That is if we're attempting to get to.
Yeah, yeah. That's what it feels like.
What if we're just digging and we're just digging and we're always just digging
Yeah, and dig.
and never ever stop digging because we're never gonna find something.
No, maybe that's what I'm doing.
Right. And that's what we're trying to say is true learning. Or
Yeah.
at least that's the word we chose.
Trying.
What's that?
Well,
Yeah. True learning.
And then,
We're trying to get somewhere.
Maybe.
But Eric had thought,
well, what I said was there's still a hole.
Yeah.
I'm thinking there's still a hole. I mean, so something's happened.
that's right.
But it seems like this true learning, as you said, there's no arrival. There's no landing. Because there's nowhere to land. I mean, it seems like learning, we have an idea that there's somewhere to land, something to get. But in this true learning, there's no landing.
When people think of it like that, you kind of can instantaneously become just absolutely exhausted. You think like, I'll never find rest.
That's right.
But it's also like a constant state of resting. It's like both at the same time.
That's right. So let's ask the question. Is playing the true learning that we're trying to get at? Playing, the reason that we're playing, if you don't get it that part, I mean, we're just fine. Playing. Which, see, to me, not to me, but it seems that playing is, it's not accumulating, it's not arriving, right? Okay? So far, I mean, all right, it's not accumulating, not arriving, not structured necessarily.
right, which is, it's not even a continuous digging, like.
Yeah.
It's not something necessarily continuous to the
It
same.
doesn't have
direction.
to be, that's right. So playing, is that the ultimate learning, playing? So let's ask this question. Why can't we just play with life? What's wrong with playing with life? You see? In a way, we've been conditioned not to even think that we can play with it. Because that's irresponsible, isn't it? I'm not talking about the job. We all have little jobs that we have to do, and we have to be responsible, and that's fine. But why, doesn't it seem strange that in a way we've been conditioned to think that if you play with life, that's superficial. It's not meaningful. Hey, get serious.
Or that's what kids do.
That's what kids do.
Maybe I gotta grow up now.
So are we getting anywhere with that? I mean, in terms of getting close to it. Not getting anywhere in terms of arrival, but just in terms of getting close to it. Oh, yeah. See, can one play with one's education? Can one play with yoga? Can one play with being a Okay, go, we're all friends. We can play with all this, you know?
Because we don't know what any of it is.
We don't know what it
I
is.
mean, even human, playing with being human,
Yeah.
we don't know what human
Can
is.
we play with being human?
And then in that sense, I mean, there isn't anything to believe in.
There's no wrong, no right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like believing is taking things seriously, and if you're not taking things seriously, you're just playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if there are beliefs, you don't take them seriously.
And even his conditioning, you're not taking it seriously. Because you realize it can change, you know, I mean, so change is playing. You know, it's part of playing.
Yeah, this is what I was saying before. You just don't take yourself seriously.
I like taking you seriously.
It's like, it's not, whatever we talk about, separation or whatever, just, this isn't serious.
Yeah, that's, I mean,
That already breaks up a lot of chunks.
So we can go in a little deeper. Is
like
it
the
possible?
answer.
What's that?
It's the answer.
The answer.
Don't take it
But aren't we really saying don't make a problem of women and the black?
Yeah. But that sounds like a pretty serious thing. Don't look at that, take that serious.
That's what it takes a lot of diligence.
It's easy to do it at any moment, take it serious.
It is.
And you can feel it come in, you know, during the course of the day, you know, come in, boom. I gotta take myself a little more seriously, or, you know, whatever.
Let's ask it a little differently. Is it possible, because Sage began tonight, he was at the table, he said he feels his resistance. Which
Or resistance to existence, whatever.
Resistance to So let's ask this question. Is it possible to live with no resistance? In other words, is it possible for resistance to arise and not take root? And that's a question, we're just asking that question.
So playing,
Share.
that's playing again. So
Yeah, play with
with the resistance.
Play with the resistance.
I think that if I ask if that's possible, it makes me feel as if I have control over it in some way.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I have anything to do with there being resistance or not. I think that
Yeah.
what I do have control over is taking it seriously or not.
Yes.
Today, I was taking it seriously.
Yeah.
There was some resistance. It seems like it probably just caused by not sleeping enough. There was some low energy resistance to existence feeling where it felt like I just didn't want to be alive.
Yeah.
And that was there. I mean, cause and effect, I could say it's from not sleeping enough. But without that, there it is.
Sure.
And
So
then
is it possible to not let that resistance root itself?
That's what I'm saying, is because I took it seriously at root, because I said, I'm feeling this.
And rather, would the solution have been to play with resistance?
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I mean, that may not happen.
Right,
You
yeah, it
know,
might not. And
today for you,
and
that happened for me, there'd be half a day, many hours where this is going on.
Right, and even today, I mean, I was aware of what I'm saying right now, but it still was there. There wasn't any resistance to the resistance, but there was still some level of taking it seriously as if it was actually happening to me. It was like, this is happening to me. It doesn't matter, but it's happening to me. And I think that belief that it's happening to me is what's always going on and what's making everything so serious. This is happening to me.
And it arises also in the same sort of whole movement that occurs. So in that sense, can there be sort of a broader sense of playful, that this thing will pass in 4 hours or 6 hours or something, and it won't really impact in a serious manner ultimately. I mean, you know, sort of even though one may not feel playful in that moment, still is there a way to play with the whole thing. Because it's going to happen, and you know, in needing life, these things occur and create a feeling of seriousness. It's inevitable.
Well, I think it's, I mean, many people like create art when they feel serious. And I think that's a way of playing with it.
Yeah, I mean, many times that can go both ways too, you know. I mean, where you take it overly serious and then, okay. But you're right, that can be very, very playful, and the creativity of it.
Just playing around. Well, now we're saying playing is like feeling playful, but that's not what we said. We said playing was learning. So applying it to the situation that any of us go through one day, feeling resistance to an emotion. We were kind of, how did we get to saying we feel playful about that and creative, or somehow things got kind of mixed up, I think. So we're just learning. Can we say that? We're learning about whatever we're feeling at that moment, or?
So are you asking that is there something that somehow occurs in this playfulness that occurs in the mind that affects the sort of situation of the mind? Because learning always does seem to imply that something is taken on and understood, seen, and then that may in some way continue or resonate. I guess something like that, the learning is.
No. I thought we said, I thought we came to learning is playing. Maybe not.
Well, Brendan suggested the idea of pure learning as an idea, just to work with it, to play with it. And it seemed that the idea of playfulness seemed to fit touch all the things that we said learning isn't. It's not accumulating, it's not structuring, it's not necessarily endlessly digging the hole, because if playfulness may decide not to do, may start doing that, and may decide to do something else. So playfulness seemed to fit the idea of a kind of a learning that didn't put us back in the old paradigm of accumulation, structure, conditioning.
But is playfulness different than playing?
Well, let's ask
What
it.
I think. I think that's what I'm.
Is playfulness different than playing? Oh, or maybe I didn't say it right. Is playing?
Yeah, that's what I said.
That's what you said. So, let's see if we get a little
I
closer.
don't know, it doesn't matter.
No.
I want to hear that question.
No,
Pretty clear.
Are we, just follow for a moment. Are we saying, is there a difference between a playful, playing with something, or just being playful? Something like that. Playful meaning sort of like kidding around, or something like that. Playful means being chummy, friendly, or.
Yeah, because playfulness implies like a certain way of being, but playing with something could be either, it could be anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
As opposed to kind of affectation or
Or behavior,
behavior, yeah.
right? So you're asking, is it a behavior, or is it a,
A way of approaching something.
yeah, a way of approaching something? I like that.
Yeah. Because you're not going to feel playful if you're feeling resistance to resistance. You're not going to feel playful, like in that playfulness. I'm just trying to clarify kind of like what we were saying.
Well, that may not be clear. I mean, we can go into that and sort of approach it. See, there may be resistance here. That's what you say, shared with us. There's resistance. I feel resistance. But it doesn't mean that I need to react as if I am that. I'm that resistance. See what I mean? There may be resistance, but it's there. So what? in that sense. Yeah, does that make
It
sense?
doesn't have to be happening to me.
That's it.
Even though it feels like it.
Yeah, and that's true for anger, that's true for depression or sadness or anything. It's there. We're acknowledging that. Does that make sense at all?
Yes.
Yeah, a little bit. So in that sense, one can play with it a little bit. Maybe not that much, because when it's there, it's
Yeah,
overpowering,
that's
it's
what we were-
overwhelming. But one could maybe say, I'm not looking to be prescriptive, but one could say, well, this too shall pass, which is a kind of a playing with it, kind of. Yeah, that's how it
But
works.
I think that saying this too shall pass still has the implication in it that it's happening to me.
That's right.
Because I'm saying, well, this is happening to me, but it's going to pass.
I understand. No, you're absolutely right.
There's a space where there isn't even a future projection of it passing at all. It just isn't happening to me. There's no consideration of there can be anything here right now. The body could be falling apart physically.
Yeah.
Where there could just be a slight depression or joy, but none of it is happening to me.
I understand. I have to admit that that's not how it hits me. I mean, I know that that's a possibility, that's what Kay is pointing to, or Tony or Lisa, or this one or that one. But when these things come on, I don't seem to be able to, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like it's me. And by the way, I just want to introduce one other thing to all of this, as long as we're considering this. There's such a thing as disassociation. Tony went into this very deeply about it when we spoke to him personally. There's such a thing as disassociation. There are people that have learned how to detach themselves from their own feelings. And they believe that they're not feeling that thing. No, really, this is very serious. Tony called it disassociation. He said it's actually a form of neuroses. It's a synthetic psychological condition that one can bring onto oneself, in which one believes that they're not feeling that. I know so many people like that.
Yeah. Or it would be a repression or denial or.
Repression, denial.
Some action to escape it
That's
is
it.
occurring.
It's an escape. That's
So
it.
then it's not acknowledged.
Or it's put on a higher plane.
The separates from that thing.
Yeah,
It's
it's-
a higher plane, yeah.
There's suffering going on. I say, well, it's not me. It's not me that suffers. See what I mean? I'm on
Yeah, that actually makes me reevaluate what I was saying, because saying it's not happening to me still implies that there's a me.
yeah,
There isn't even a me. It's not happening or not happening to anyone.
Right, but something is happening.
something's happening.
So then along with that, is it sort of territory of feeling it? I mean, most of the time there wants to be a really escape from that,
Yeah.
which is, moving into this future, you get stuck into time again. So is there a way of playing with it even though it's painful, so that you're not escaping, you're not moving away, you're not repressing, you're not denying, you're not disassociating. The thing is happening.
There's something a little speculative in that question.
Yeah.
But I wonder if we could ask it slightly differently, just following what you
Yeah.
said. If I acknowledge what's there, is that playing with it?
That's nice, that's interesting.
That makes sense?
Because it certainly opens up the possibility for it in experience. I mean, as I've, you know what I mean? In that sense, then it opens up a possibility for a different way of being with it, meeting it, just by acknowledging it.
Yeah. Because when I don't acknowledge it, then I'm escaping it.
Right, and then it's a whole other pattern that sets up.
Oh.
Well, it seems like the whole way we're approaching this is out of searching for a better way to deal with it.
It seems like that, but, or are we just playing with it?
I mean, I could just be playing with it by asking you that.
Yeah.
So I don't get the point in asking if we're playing with it.
No, you see,
Every 2 minutes.
no. You see, the reason I asked it, now you make a good point, Sam. No, the reason I asked it is, are we looking for an arrival here? And is dialogue set up for arrivals, for conclusions, for resolutions? Or is this the essence of playing? That's all I'm just
Well, either way, can I be playing and looking for an arrival?
Sure.
Isn't that also playing?
Of course. I think it's
There's the answer.
See, I think it kind of, why do you take anything seriously? I mean, this has really just struck my mind with some power.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like this some quality of seriousness creates solidity to something.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as I acknowledge, even if I acknowledge something, or like, I make it into something, like something solid,
Yeah.
where nothing, it's even this universe seems to be playing.
Ah!
Like, we were out watching the sprinklers today, and we were watching the water, and all of a sudden I felt like this water is just laughing right now. The water was just spraying everywhere, and it was like, everything was playing. And in that moment it struck me, why am I taking anything seriously?
Yeah.
I mean, the smallest thing, any emotion, what creates like a solidity to my experience of that? Why? And it seems to be this seriousness, like it's, I don't know if I want to use words like real or is it really happening, but like just seriousness. You know? Like, it's concerning. It's like,
Weighing you down.
it's weighing, yeah.
And was that learning? When you sense the
When I sense the whole thing was a play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the world was laughing.
Because in that sense, yes, I realize that what I am just playing. I mean, I am that play too. It's like,
You see, I want to ask you just slightly differently. Can I enter into, let's say, a dialogical setting, right, in which things are being explored, examined, and exposed, and not look for arrivals, not look for solutions, resolutions, and answers, and still, it still has validity to me. It still has some value, in other words. And the value could be seeing all the resistances that are coming up in the mind as we go into things. Seeing that I am positioning myself. And that could be a kind of a learning.
I am serious about it.
Yeah.
And I am serious So silly. I know this idea. And I know the answer here.
That's right. And this is mine.
Yeah.
My answer.
Absurd.
But you know, sort of beautiful in a way, the whole thing, because it is play. And any of it, all of it is play. So it doesn't have to be seen as absurd or any particular way of seeing it, really.
Or hopeless.
Or hopeless, the other side.
The other side. But there are many people that enter into dialogical settings, like in our program, AD program, and they come and think, oh, this is hopeless, I haven't gotten anything, I haven't. They enter into it with great expectation, something amazing is going to be revealed. And maybe something is revealed, and it may be the nothingness that Brendan was talking about yesterday, which is tremendous. I mean, if you can see that, that's I think it's amazing. The emptiness that's present is an amazing thing. You know, I was asked to do a dialogue for the first teacher program, you know, the one that Paul does. Paul Hurd was the first person to start that. And so I had a dialogue with these teachers, and by the way, teachers are the worst people. Worst thing to do.
Most serious.
Worst people in the world. They cannot learn anything. It's like they sit there and they say to you, I dare you, the teachers, I dare you to show. That's what that's the resistance. Because when I taught at Parsons School of Design, I was a full-time teacher there. They used to send me all the teachers to teach me. I used to do programs, so they'd send me all the teachers that program, and they would sit there like, I'm a teacher, I'm triple PhD, this and that. So it was, and none of the other teachers were able to be relaxed with them. They'd all get reactive, So I asked the kinds of questions that would help these teachers to see what they bring into the classroom. My authority, my demands, my expectations, my punishment, my factor of fear that I introduced, all of these things. And we looked at all of that. We actually explored it. And then one teacher was in his 50s, said to me at the end, so big deal. All we've learned is the kinds of things I bring into the class, I said, my God, if you see all of that, that means you won't hurt any of these kids. You won't hurt them. You won't damage them. So sometimes, So what one can get out of a dialogical setting, if it's a real dialogue, may not be something you can kind of carry away necessarily as something. Maybe just be insight. Is this good?
This is good. I mean, we have 20 minutes, but
This is good.
Is it-
Everybody a little tired?
is there anything else anybody would like to?
There's like little questions on the paper that we.
Oh, well, there always is.
Yeah.
And those questions are really just entry points.
Yeah.
Places that we can begin. But would you like to read them again? And would you like to hear them again and see if it's something else?
Sure.
Okay. Can I examine the entire field of my beliefs, or do I hold that some beliefs are too sacred or off limits to examine? Do I see how conditioned patterns and structures are operating in my mind and shaping my perception? Does conditioning form a background in my mind from which I act? Can I navigate my life without depending on conditioning? Can I see the authority within that shapes my responses? Can I drop the need for authority so I can see directly with clarity?
I think we touched on most of
Yeah.
those, except maybe the last one, about dropping authority.
Dropping authority.
What would be the entry point there? See, maybe we can begin by asking the question, do I actually see the authority within? I see it out there. So we're just asking the question, Brent. Can I or do I actually see the authority within? Because I think we've touched on that. All of our work that we've done tonight, not people work, playing, that we've done tonight, is really leading up to this question. I see it out there, the authority, but can I see it inwardly? Eric?
Such an interesting question because what is seeing? What is there that sees that authority?
Okay.
Could we say that it is the authority that would see authority? Well, what else would see it? It's just a creation of a me.
Yes. Is there, let's see if I just want to align. Is there a seeing that is not conditioned by that authority? Something like that.
I think we can see belief as an authority.
Very interesting.
And certainly that's happening within.
Yes. Is there a seeing that's not conditioned by authority?
Isn't there a popular quote that is, seeing is believing?
That's very good. Oh my God, never thought that one.
Seeing is believing.
That never made any sense to me.
That's the crack in the egg.
Sounds like double talk or
Mm-hmm. But let's follow Zach's insight. Seeing and believing means that if you show something to me and prove it to me, I become a believer, right? I start off not believing, and you show it to me, prove it to me, now I'm a believer. Seeing is believing.
And why do I have to believe it if it's a fact?
Well, of course.
It's just a
I
fact.
thought of authority in a different way.
Yes.
Author.
Yep.
Offer, an offer.
An offer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never thought of that word that way, because I was, at first with that question, I was thinking of like, when I tell myself I'm gonna do something, like I won't like smoke pot I'm not gonna smoke pot anymore. And then I do. And then it's like, I'm letting down the authority that was telling me to do it. You know, it's like, but I'm only letting down myself. Like there's no one else that's being let down by it. And even if there is someone else being let down, I determine whether or not it affects me. So that was what I was thinking of as the authority. I am always I have the last say on how I feel about anything.
Sure.
Other people can make me feel different ways, but it's up to me to actually be affected by it. But then I also thought of the authority, the author, the feeling that I'm somehow writing this life. Like, so is there seeing without authority? Is there seeing without any sense of doership or a sense of doership?
Yeah. That's where our authority.
Yeah.
But look at this. This is very interesting. I say I'm not going to smoke pot, which means already I'm at war with myself. Because inwardly I'd say, gee, it's nice to be high all the time. And in fact, I never want to be straight. Right? And then inwardly I say, well, no, I'm going to stop for a while, for 10 minutes, an hour, whatever, when it starts off. So already I'm at war with myself. If one sees that, that's a very interesting thing to begin to. You see what I mean? The war, the battleground.
That's
the beginning.
very interesting. Who's at war?
Yeah, who's at war? That's
it's all inside of me, and then there's that importance to it, that seriousness of like, no, you really need to like not do this, or like I really do want to do it.
Yeah.
And it's like all of it is just happening inside of me. It's like all up to me. It's like, why am I creating this whole thing?
That's right. So that's that aspect, and this goes back to what Francesco was saying, holding two opposing beliefs. But also, it's two desires. One desire, let's say, is to be sober. I'm just being simplistic about it. And the other desire is to escape sobriety, to escape the dullness of daily living, or whatever it is.
It's actually the opposite.
The opposite.
Personally, but it doesn't matter.
Okay.
For example.
But I mean,
I don't know if we're talking about me.
no. I was actually talking about, everyone used to smoke many years ago. We certainly know what that's like.
You get older and your throat really.
It's not just that. As a matter of fact, at the moment, I'm getting a little personal about it. The grass was that the dependency. I didn't like it.
That's what it is for me. It's that I don't want to smoke it, but it's a habit.
Yeah.
So those are the forces.
Yeah, of course.
And then, well, just continue what happens too is in the stopping, one starts to experience the sort of need and feeling victimized and a whole deflation.
Also the sense of lack.
The lack, it builds up to much more of a sort of kind of height, and it's like you have to deal with that to get through, So dependency, see, there seems to be, this is what we're pointing to also, this dependency on conditioning, on belief. Similar processes going on.
Yes.
Addiction to belief or whatever,
Yeah, that's one aspect. But, so, I mean, let's just look at smoking grass just for a moment. Or anything. I mean, having to take a drink, that you feel nervous or whatever it is that one does. Anything being addiction, anything being a habit. But the thing is that, can one go through that period in which things seem dull and unexciting, where you don't have that saturation of sensation, because when you smoke grass or anything like that, once the sensations get highly saturated, color and feelings.
It's the opposite for me.
Oh, the opposite, okay.
Yeah.
For many people.
Very dull when I'm high.
Okay,
Very dull.
that's very interesting.
That's why I don't like it. I don't like it.
What's that?
I was just suggesting that it's kind of what you made of it.
Oh, what you mean. But, so can one go through a period of lack and all the things that may come up, that may arise? Because in a way, it's very interesting. Like, for instance, when Deborah and I were smoking, I'm an artist, and so is Deborah. So I stopped doing all art completely, because I found that I was like using it to do the art. I was like using it as a creative impetus, or open things up, or free things, or whatever. So I stopped doing everything that I felt was being supported by it. And then it was easy to stop it in that sense. And then once I got to a certain point, past the threshold of some kind, I was able to start it up again. And it had nothing to do whatsoever with smoking in that sense. So it could be that one has to go through a period of where one says, okay, whatever the smoking does for me, whatever it's adding to in some way, whatever that is, when each person may have to decide what that is. And just not do that. And in other words, to give oneself a chance to move away from it.
See, that may be what we're afraid of too. I mean, again, going back to belief or
Yeah.
the authority or the conditioning, that one would go through.
That's
that
right.
same thing.
That's right. Same thing.
And so once one has a little bit of a feeling of that, one is afraid and doesn't want to have to go through that sort of stress of whatever feeling of deflation, and so one moves back into a subtle ways of it builds up again the belief. It's
That's right.
the same process that seems to be would be what's occurring. Even if I had a sense that there's no need, let's say, I mean, there's going to be like this transitional. What do you call it when you're getting off your alcohol, your heroin? Withdrawal. The withdrawal period.
Of the meeting.
Of the or the belief or any of these things.
Yeah. So, let's bring it right down to the daily life then.
Yeah.
You point out to me, you all point out to me, you say, look, Richard, you're not living realistically. You're spending too much money, your house mortgage is too much money, your food bill is too much, your forms of entertainment are too much. You have to give it up. That means giving up the house. Giving up buying clothes whenever I feel dull, I go out and shop. Giving up going to restaurants all the time. And in fact, Aaron and I went through exactly that. We actually went through that withdrawal in order to adjust our lives to be able to live the way we live. That's why we live in a mobile home park. It was a huge adjustment. But we did it just actually in the same way that you are wanting to get off grass, as an experiment to see what's the image of Richard Endeavor without that. We own the house, we have a gorgeous house. But we sold it, we got rid of it. And we just cut everything down and saw what that was like. And that's bringing it to the daily life. You know?
Yeah.
And I know, of course, Brendan has cut a lot of his things down to the bone so that he could live here, and that we've done the same. So, in a way, it really, it's not just, let's say, smoking. It really is the daily life. You know, can one live within one's means? Can one, and not feel a lack? That's the thing. You know? Not feel that sense that, you know, that you're...
I realize that, but you also realize that may arise.
Yeah.
You know, feeling of lack and then, you know, deflation, like dullness. And life doesn't seem to really, you know, feel like it's worth it somehow. All these things, it will arise because if in the play and the experiment of this, it's our consciousness, our thinking mind, this whole thing that we're dealing with is going to project that. It's part of it. It's inherent within the whole way that we think, or you know, our mind is functioning.
That's right.
So it's inevitable that that's going to arise.
It will arise. So now I have a prescription, so you can all hate me for saying this, because I always say, oh, let's not be prescriptive, no prescription. And I really believe that. But there actually is a prescription for it. Which is, if one takes up something like an art form, writing, painting, music, whatever it is that one does, I know you're into music and sax. If one can take up something, then it's amazing how that thing could carry you into your old age. It could carry you right through your life. Something you can always go back to that isn't doing the same thing to you that, let's say, smoking does, or having to have the big house does, or the big career does,
Right.
or all that business does. It's something very personal and very, so that's prescriptive, but actually that works. It's something you may want to think of.
It does, that's not how it works.
Okay.
For me, it's like, and I'm actually noticing a reflection in this, which is interesting. It's like, for me, if I'm smoking, life is dull and not worth living. When I'm high and if I'm smoking.
Yeah.
Everything about it is negative. I don't enjoy it.
Oh, that's pretty easy then.
but it's not. But every time, and I don't have weed of my own ever, but I have friends that smoke it. So whenever it's around, it's very difficult for me not to smoke it. It's this habit where I get that I just do it because I'm used to it, because I've been doing it for so long. I don't know. But
it appears that makes no sense.
Yeah.
That's too.
On some level.
But this is, I'll go into that with you in a second, but I noticed this reflection. It's the same thing with identifying as an individual.
Of course.
I notice that when I live my life as an individual, it's dull and not worth living. It's very sad and depressing life to live as
That's very honest.
person.
I appreciate it.
And I know that. I know that I get, there's nothing enjoyable for me about living as a person other than, you know, sometimes feeling like a great person and happy. Yet there's that habit. There's still the habit that sometimes comes back and I identify.
Yes. So
Why?
Well, wait,
question about that one too.
No, this is very interesting because it's not just, and if you don't mind, I'm just looking at it. It's not just that I'm with my friends and they're smoking, I smoke. It's the culture of that friendship. There's a culture there,
Yeah.
and the culture is the culture of smoking.
Right.
But was it, yeah, and who's sage if he doesn't smoke?
Ah,
Well, I've known that sage.
Has the culture.
Yeah. You know, the culture has known that sage and I've known that sage, but that sage, and I like that sage better. That's where the whole conflict comes from, is that there's these two sages, and I compare them, and I say the sage that doesn't smoke weed is better than the one that does.
Can you let that drop?
And when that drops, I just smoke a bunch of weed, and there's no problem. But I'm very dull, and I'm not very happy, but there's no problem. The problem comes from the conflict of this stage is better than the other.
Which will inevitably arise, that other,
Mm-hmm.
you know, idea of the sage.
But that also, that same thing comes up, the beingness that is not any particular sage is better than being any particular sage. There's that level as well. There's something that comes in and says, if I don't exist as a human, or if there's no me, that's somehow better than if there is a me. There's also that projection.
I just don't understand why you smoke pot.
I don't
On
know.
a basic level, like without anything else, like if it's not, you said it's not enjoyable at all, and it's not pleasurable, it doesn't bring any type of satisfaction, it just brings
The
pain.
only satisfaction is in smoking it.
The act
In
of
the act.
smoking.
Mm-hmm.
But that's culture.
Yeah.
Social drinking.
Social drinking.
Yeah, it's like, it's just desire to smoke it until it's smoked, and then I see, whoa, I really didn't want to do that. But that like anxiousness doesn't subside until I smoke.
But if you really looked for what is desirous in the act of smoking, could you really locate it?
No.
I mean, like you have to be, like what is really desirous about that?
But
No part of it. I
But
can't
see,
find it.
there's also these cigarette smokers too. I mean, they know that they're killing themselves. But there is there is an anxiety, you mentioned it. So the action of the smoking, it's a whole culture within itself, even if it's not with other people, it's lighting it, it's holding it, it's, you know, smoking it, it's flicking the ash off. It's a whole series they're a distraction from this anxiety. So it's sort of there's this underlying, and whatever action I can take to, somehow bring pleasure instead of feel the sense of anxiety. So it's on that track, that movement between the anxiety, so whatever action it is, and whether it's healthy or not, doesn't matter. Because it's somehow alleviating the anxiety.
Yeah, and it just appeared to me that maybe desire, like when we desire something we know brings us pleasure. And I asked you, why do you smoke? And you narrowed it down to this little part, just the smoking.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then if we look at that, about what's desirous in that, I don't know if we could really find anything. I mean, because desire somehow creates an object that we want. Like you want just that little pleasure right at the beginning of the smoking. But if we really look at what's pleasurable about that, I don't know what we're really find.
I don't find anything. It feels like the desire is for the desire to be fulfilled. There's actually no object involved. It's just desire to not desire.
No, there is an object in the sense. I'm not denying what you say. What you say is great validity. But I feel by myself. I don't feel like very much that is pointed out, which I deeply appreciate your honesty and sharing it. By the way, that's a very unusual thing for anyone, especially a young person, to be that honest. But it's being with my friends. That's what's giving me the pleasure. And being with my friends means smoking with my friends. So I would have to, in a way, confront the need to be with my friends. You see what I mean? Even because the smoking may not even be that's just the.
But that isn't even. If we're actually still talking about me, then that doesn't apply really, because it's not like what it means to be with my friends. But
No, but you said when you're with your friends and they do smoke, then you feel okay, they're smoking, so I'll join them. It's just a culture.
But you would also smoke with a bunch of strangers.
Yeah.
Oh, you would? But that doesn't,
It's whenever there's weed. It's not about just my friend.
Oh.
If there is weed near me,
yeah.
it's very difficult not to smoke it, even though I know that I don't want to be high.
Yeah.
But I'm not looking for like a solution to that right now. You guys
But I
keep
think
talking about
but
it.
it's-
No, you're not looking
It's
for a
not, it's
solution.
not just your thing, in a
Yeah.
sense, because I think we're all experiencing that somewhere, and something in our lives.
It could be the house, it could be
Yeah, it could
the
be.
expense account, it could be
It could be a woman or anything.
Could be-
Yeah,
that's
right.
it could be anything.
that's
I
right.
mean, I'm looking at this, yeah, I'm looking at this in a really interesting way. I mean, what do you really want from somebody? It's the same question as what I want in grass. I mean, it's like,
And what's it doing for me?
Yeah.
in a sense?
I mean, it just strikes me, I don't know.
No, that's a good question.
Yeah, yeah.
So I wonder if we can raise another question here, which is, can I become aware of the energetic, the level of energy of my life? Become aware of that?
And also that there are certain energies that are very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then I'll name that anxiety. If something very deeply uncomfortable comes into the body, and it wants to do something to, sort of
Shit.
shift out and to create a different energy, in a way you could say, on an energetic level.
So can I become aware of the presence of anxiety? Is that
Yeah.
following?
Or uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable. Don't even give it a name.
Because it could be sadness, and
Yeah.
it could be a slight,
Hopelessness.
variations. They're all variations on some shift of an energetic feeling that some feel comfortable, some don't.
So stay with uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Can I feel the depth of that uncomfortable feeling?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a real question. I mean, I asked Molly this question when we first started dialogue, if you remember, and I said, can I feel what it's like to enter the classroom on the first day of a class? I may not know everyone. I may not know the teacher. And it's uncomfortable, maybe you keep friends with everyone. But if you don't know that many people, it could be uncomfortable, I don't know what to expect. I don't know if this person, the woman or the man, are going to be overly demanding. I don't know if they're going to be sympathetic, friendly, or if the student's going to be, competitive.
See, what's also, I think, interesting is when these shifts of energy occur, the conditioning kicks in, and I need to be a certain way. So I deny it, I deny the feeling.
I deny the feeling.
And this is, so if one can, is there a way to be very sensitive to these subtle shifts of energy in the body, and then seeing where the action goes when that occurs? Like the need to smoke or to, raid the icebox or whatever.
I don't know if you know this about Marlon Brando. You know how fat Marlon Brando got? Anybody know that? You know his life? Weighed like 300 pounds. You can Google interview with him and Larry King, and he weighed about 300. Anyway, what he used to do is he hired a guy to put a chain on his refrigerator. And for some period of the day, he seemed to manage, and then he would begin to beg the guy to unlock the refrigerator, because the guy was paid not to. So he would beg even more. And but why do you cry, please? And of course the guy would, because he worked. And he was working for he was. And then,
Yes.
I wasn't sure what was in the refrigerator, I was like boobies or something.
He's doing your eyes. Chicken.
Yeah.
There's the nature of desire.
There's the nature of desire.
Get down on your hands and knees.
So in that sense, since Sage was kind enough to share that with all of us, in that sense, I think that one would have to be able to feel whatever's going on inwardly. I mean, and become tremendously sensitive to that. These, let's say, uncomfortable feelings, if that's what one is feeling. And that may be a clue that maybe one could enter into a dialogue with oneself on some level, in some way. I'm not sure I'm saying that quite right, but.
Is there?
It's good.
It's very powerful, though.
What's that?
Looking at the conditioning and belief and where it takes, how much more can be revealed in a sense.
I honestly think it's the key to this whole business. I think one needs to become aware. I know I'm saying one needs to become aware. I'm sorry, but there has to be a sensitive awareness or seeing into the whole inner resistance that's operating. Because it's resistance to life. And as Brendan was pointing out, we don't know what that is. I'm not saying I know what that is. But whatever that is, that creative arising appearance, one doesn't want to really resist that. If one resists it, it's like you're not alive. So shout out to you.
you, everybody. See you next week.
We keep orchard here or orchard?
There's no particular number.
I don't think there were any.
Oh, we'll keep four. Okay, 2 here, and those 2 go there. Thanks so much.
Looks like windows are clean.
Looks like your jacket is there.
Yeah, I just put it.
Oh. But you didn't have it on? Oh, you had it on the chair.
I had the back chair.
Okay. Put some socks on. They have a page open to this, the French artist Mordell, who.
Oh, you look at the sculptor look how young he is. My God. He looks very noble.
Doesn't he? It just was natural to him. So what's that? 28, so he's like 30-ish. I thought the artists looked very interesting.
Very
I mean, he
interesting.
looks like, he's wearing almost like a Tibetan or a.
Yeah.
Looks like Campbell. Yeah.
Oh.
Campbell was influenced. Do you remember on a boat?
Oh, yeah. And he influenced him?
Yeah.
God, he probably influenced everybody there.
Yeah, I mean, at some point in their lives. You know.
Very amazing.
See his name true.
Yes. I'm gonna throw this out.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Me too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Good to see you as always.
Oh, thank you. We'll go out the back.